Today's objective is going to be dividing decimals. And we're going to be doing two things with dividing decimals. We're going to be dividing a decimal by a whole number and then dividing a decimal by a decimal. So in order to divide a decimal by a whole number, you simply divide as you would any two regular whole numbers. The only difference is step 2. You're going to line up the decimal point in the quotient with the point in the dividend. So here is my example problem. I went through and I divided the whole thing as I would a normal long division problem. The only difference is I took my decimal point and I put it directly above in the quotient. So step 3 is stop when you get a 0 remainder, unless it's a repeating decimal, and you'll be able to tell. Remember before when we talked about repeating decimals, it would go, for example, 1.232323, and then you would be able to tell that you could stop. In this case, in my example problem, I was able to get a remainder of 0, so I was able to stop. Okay, dividing a decimal by a decimal. Step 1 is you're going to need to move the decimal point or multiply by powers of 10 to make the divisor a whole number. So this is what the problem looked like. 1.9 divided by, 0.114 divided by 1.9. You cannot have a divisor as a decimal. You need to make it a whole number. So what you're going to do is you're going to move the decimal, in this case only one place, or 1 power of 10. I'm going to move it here to turn 1.9 into 19. And then if I do it here, I have to do it here. So I'm going to move it here. And then if you notice, I already carried the decimal place up. So my problem became 1.14 divided by 19, and I ended up with 0.06. I'd like you to copy these down and try them on a piece of paper. So I want you to try 3.804 divided by 3.17 and 1.8 divided by 1.6. So I want you to try those on a piece of paper. But don't forget to move your decimal places. So you can pause the video and do that now, and then hit play so you can see me go through the answer. Okay. So hopefully you can see what started out as 804 divided by 3.17. I couldn't have a decimal in my divisor, so I had to move it 2 places here. So that means I moved it 2 places here and then put it above. So 317 goes into 380 one time. I subtracted and I got 63. I brought down my 4. 317 goes into 634 2 times. I get a remainder of 0, so my answer is 1.2. And hopefully that's what you got as well. Next problem. 1.8 divided by 1.6 became 16 and 18. So 16 goes into 18 once. I got 2. I added a 0. 16, 1. 16 goes into 20 one time. Remainder 4, drop the 0. And like I said, it's not always going to work out where you're going to get a 0 as a remainder, and this is the perfect example. As you can tell, when I dropped my 0, I got a 4. So the answer would have just kept going. So what I chose to do, and what you're going to do a lot of the time when you're dealing with decimals, is just round to the nearest hundredth. So I ended up with 1.12. When we're dealing with decimals, a lot of the time you're going to be dealing with examples of money, because money is a perfect real-life example of using decimals. And in the problem, it will tell you, round to the nearest tenth, or round to the nearest hundredth if you're doing some other kind of decimal problem. The reason why we want to round to the nearest tenth is because it only makes sense. There are only nearest hundredth, only tenth and a hundredth in money. So you're never going to go past that when dealing with money, so you'll always know where your stopping point is when you're dealing with a problem that asks a question about money. For example, $1.49 for an 8-pack of cards. What's the cost of one card? So you would take $1.49 and divide it by 8. And I want you to go through and, you can completely solve this problem. Hit pause, and then restart. So what you should end up with is $1.86, because you needed to round, because there is no place value that goes past the hundredths place in money. And that is how you divide decimals.